Pain, 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 pain. I don't know. You just expect me to do with my questions, and I'm scared. I'm real scared. Hi, welcome back to the second video of what is my favorite thing that I have ever made, the Throne of Glass reading vlog. Today's video is going to include Queen of Shadows and the tandem read of Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, which incredible, amazing, stunning, show-stopping. This is gonna be a lot of footage. I personally enjoy very long-form content, so feel free to put this on while you're doing something, or if you really actually want to know about the plot, then watch it, I guess. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have fun with me as I lose my mind continuously over the characters that I have grown very, very attached to. Let me know down below if you have read the series, and if you haven't, I don't know what you're waiting for, because this should convince you more than enough to go read it. Go read it if you haven't, because it is excellent. It is absolutely beautiful. I wish I could erase it from my brain and read it for the very first time again. But since I can't, I have these videos to continue looking back on as I lose my mind. I have been having a lot of fun editing the footage, and it's like I've relived reading them for the first time. Watching me lose my mind over them has been very, very fun, even though there's a lot of footage. I feel bad for editing me. But yeah, this video series is my baby, so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you love it as much as I loved making it and reading these books. And without further ado, because there's more than enough footage in this video, I'm gonna stop rambling and I will let you get to what you came here for. I'm reading Queen of Shadows. I started. I'm what, 100 pages in, I think? If that? Yeah, 106 pages in. And already so much has happened. We open with our king, our bestie boy, King Dorian. No, I mean, Prince Dorian. We open on Prince Dorian. His consciousness is still there, but he can't fight against the Valk Prince that is inside of him. So he really can't do anything or fight his father or even say anything against his dad. The little thing that's inside of him controls him completely. But his consciousness is still there. He doesn't fully remember if he's a prince. He has like these moments where he's like not really fully there. And we see this later on in the book as well. He remembers that when he looks at the king, he sees the man that had killed Saoirse. And I think he remembers Saoirse, but he doesn't remember that she's his lover or anything like that. Selena comes back to Rifthold, but she goes by Aelin now. Everybody knows that she's Aelin. She goes by Aelin. She doesn't go by Selena. So she's like, Selena's dead, basically. She goes to this tavern situation thing where she knows that Arabin is going to be, and she's surprised to find that Kale, he is so irritating. He's so irritating. He pissed me off. He pissed me off. She sees him. He's making a deal with Arabin, which is like, you know what she went through when she made a deal with Arabin the first time. Why would you make her do this? Or why would you do this? Why would you go to Arabin out of all the other solutions that you could have? Anyways, he goes to Arabin. He's making a deal with him. Selena ends up sitting with Arabin. After Kale leaves, she doesn't really talk to him. She's like, deal me in. She plays the game with Arabin. She talks to Arabin for a little bit. He's like, your cousin Aedion is still alive. If you want to go get him, I will help you. Let's make a deal. Let me help you get Aedion out of imprisonment, because Aedion is sick and he's wounded and he's praying for death in the cellars of the castle, because he doesn't want himself to be a bait for Selena to come, or for Aelin to come and save him, because he knows that the king will get her. So he's like, I hope I die. He didn't tell anybody or the guards about his injury or his fever or how sick he is. He doesn't tell anybody. He lets himself basically rot away in the cellar in hopes that he would die before his execution, which is set for 3 days from when Selena arrives in Rifthold, because it would be Prince Dorian's birthday party, and he's set to be the main event, the main entertainment of the night. And he knows that he's basically bait for Aelin to come and save him, so he doesn't want her to come, so he wants to die before she gets there by sickness or anything else, or even have someone kill him. Arabin tells Selena, he's like, hey, I'll help you get him out of imprisonment. Let me help you. I'm sorry I did what I did. I never meant to hurt you. Let me like lay the world at your feet. I love you. I still care about you. Blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And he gives her a deal. He's like, you owe me a favor, but let me help you. Like, if I help you, the cost is that I would be able to ask for a favor whenever, whatever favor I want. She's like, I'll think on it. She leaves. We meet Nesrin Falak. She is Kale's basically old little situation. They used to like get it on, but after his lover ended up leaving him for Dorian's brother, so before Selena, and now she's back and she's working with Kale, and she ends up coming to go get Selena after her meeting with Arabin. Selena ends up fighting with her, or Aelin. I keep calling her Selena, but now she goes by Aelin. Aelin puts like a little dagger at her throat, and basically she's like, I'm taking you to Kale. I'm taking you to the captain. The captain is no longer the captain. He doesn't work for the king anymore. He's working with the rebels to try. He doesn't really necessarily want to free magic anymore. But anyway, Nesrin takes Aelin down in the tunnels, down in the little sewers, to go see Kale and talk to him, because obviously she's back and Kale has seen her and he knows that she's back. So he comes in and he's holding this injured man. I'm not really sure who it was, I don't remember. Nesrin ends up taking the man, and there's like a situation that Kale has to go to, so he goes to it. And then he ends up talking with Selena. And he's such a bitch when he talks to Selena. He's such a bitch. He's yelling at her. He's like, oh, this is all your fault. If you hadn't done this, none of this would have happened. If you didn't show off and basically scream and shout to the world that you're Aelin and that you have magic, then the king wouldn't have done what he did to Dorian and to me and to Saoirse and to Aedion, and it's all your fault. And he's like, you left and you didn't care about anybody, and you've been parading and like working on your magic while all of us suffer here, blah 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 blah. Literally, I cannot stand that man. I cannot and will not stand that man. I want him to choke. I wish he would choke on his tongue. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of 4 in the Divergent series. If you've read that series, you'll know why he reminds me of 4. Because he's such a whiny ass man. Get it together, bro. Like, stop whining. You don't know what she's been through. How are you gonna assume? How are you gonna assume that she's just been like rainbows and sunshines and butterflies? Ugh, I can't stand men. I can't. Kale tells Selena that the reason that he was meeting with Arabin is that he wants to kill the king. That's the deal he's trying to make. He's trying to kill the king. To get the king killed so he can put Dorian on the throne. Selena tells him like, hey, you can't put Dorian on the throne because he's basically gone. Because in her head, she's convinced that if a Valk prince gets inside of him, which it is because he has the little collar, the black collar around his neck, that he's basically gone and the Valk prince is in his place. So she's like, you can't put Dorian on the throne because he's not himself anymore. We should kill him. And Kale is like, no, I'm not gonna kill him, which really made me really sad. I really sincerely and like with all depths of my heart, I pray to God that he's not gone fully. Like, from the glimpses that we've gotten from his point of view, he's not really gone, because he ends up going to see Aedion at some point later on in the book, and he sees Aedion and he's talking to him, and Aedion is like trying to like coerce the info out of him, and he's like, do you know where they buried Saoirse? And Dorian doesn't answer, and he's like, do you know what happened to the girl that you love that got beheaded at the court by your father? And he doesn't say anything, but when he walks out, he tells the guards that he's injured, that Aedion is injured, and that he's sick and that they need to take care of him. So he ends up being treated, and Aedion is pissed off about that because he's like, now I can't even die peacefully. And Aelin is going to come and have to save me. And when Dorian goes back to his father afterwards to report that Aedion is sick, because he's basically now the king's eyes and ears, and, you know, he tells him everything, he reports to him. When he goes to tell the king that Aedion was sick and he's gotten, you know, he's getting fixed or whatever, when Dorian enters, the king tells him to kneel, and he doesn't want to. Like, you can very clearly see that he's trying to fight against this thing that's inside of him, and he really doesn't want to kneel, but he has no option because his body just automatically does it. And the entire time he's talking to the king, he's like, oh, this is the man that beheaded that girl, but he doesn't know who the girl is. So I think he's still technically there, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Then you have, which is so interesting because I did not think this was going to come back. I should have known, because we get a glimpse of our very own Duke Parrington, the shittiest man. Well, not really, the king is, but you know, one of the shitty men of the court. And they're in Morath, which is where the king had sent him and Kaltain in the first book. They're in Morath with Manon and the rest of the Black Beak witch clan, and they're all there working together. Manon is basically like, she reports to Duke Parrington, she tells him what's going on, and she like does work for him and stuff. But Duke Parrington is in charge of these creatures that Manon says smell bad. They smell like exactly the same as what the Valk princes smell like. So basically, Duke Parrington is working with the Valk princes and with the like the shadowy little spirit things. And Kaltain is also there, and she has a black ring or like a black collar around her neck. We pretty much get a clear picture of her being abused by Duke Parrington, but she doesn't scream or doesn't, you know, shy away from him or like flinch away when he comes near her. She's basically like mindless, brainless. She doesn't have any thought in her head, which is so strange. I did not expect that to come back around. But I guess the king had sent Duke Parrington to Morath to work with these creatures that he's creating. So that's interesting. I feel bad for Kaltain. And Manon hates the entire thing. She hates being there. She hates it even more when Duke Parrington comes to her and he's like, I'm going to need you to give me a coven of Blackbeak witches so I can see if they're breedable with the Valk princes. Which, what? Like, what? How? I, like, with this story, I literally never know where it's going. I never know where it's going. Because when I read that, I said, huh? What are we talking about? What are we talking? Why are we breeding a Valk prince with a witch? You know, like, that just doesn't seem like the best course of action. Personally, for me. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid for them. Manon is like, I'm not gonna do it. He's like, you're gonna do it. She's like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not giving you a fucking coven of my witches. And he's like, you're gonna pick and you're gonna give them to me so we can test on them if they're breedable or not. So Manon is pissed off about that. Then we return to Selena, who agrees to Arobyn's deal. She basically agrees. She's like, all right, I'll do it. Arobyn sends Lysandra to her. Lysandra is a girl that was bought by Arobyn with Selena's freedom money. So when Selena freed herself from her debt to Arobyn, she gave him all this money, and he ends up buying Lysandra with that money in the first book. And we see that happen, and she's very pissed off about it, and she tries to throw a dagger at her, and she misses and nicks her ear. And so they have like this beef between them. So when Arobyn sends Lysandra to her, Lysandra is accompanied by this girl Evangeline. She's talking to Selena. She's like, Arobyn sent me to tell you the plan to free Aedion from the king. And Lysandra had a lover. His name was Wesley. Wesley died because he was killed in the whole situation with Arobyn and Ruruk person. The people who Sam and Selena were meant to murder in the first book, in the prequels, they ended up killing her lover. His name was Wesley. Wesley had a letter that he wrote for Selena that said everything that Arobyn had told him, everything that Arobyn had told Ruruk to do to Sam, and how to torture him, and what to do to Selena. And now Lysandra has that letter. So she's been carrying it for years. So Lysandra gives Selena the letter, and Selena's like, why are you giving me this now? Why have you been holding on to this for 4 years or however long? And Lysandra's like, it's because I loved him very much, meaning Wes. And so she's like, you've changed in the 2 years that you've been gone, or however long she's been gone. Why isn't it possible for me to change? This has been mentioned by other characters in the book before, which is a very intense line. And she talks to Evangeline, who is this little kid that came with Lysandra. Evangeline tells Selena, she's like, I cried and cried and cried when my mother sold me to Clarice, which is the mother of the courtesans, I guess. Not the mother, but like she basically pimps them out. She's the head of the courtesans that work there. Evangeline tells this to Selena. She's like, I cried and cried and cried when my mother told me to Clarice. Because I guess she was pissed off with Lysandra that day. She gave me to her and told her to watch me. And Lysandra basically gave her a scar so she wouldn't be able to be valuable to sell or to like give to men. Even though Lysandra was about to pay off her debt, she ends up incurring more debt because she ends up having to pay for Evangeline, buying her basically from Clarice because she's no longer a viable option to pimp out. Now she's even more in debt and she has to continue to work for Clarice. Lysandra told Clarice that she had given Evangeline the little scar because she didn't want her to be competition for her. But really she didn't do that. She did it because she wanted her to be free. She didn't want her to be sold like she was. And lastly, this is the shit that really sent me over the wall because I was like, oh my god, the books are connecting. we get this scene where Manon goes back to her room and there's like this little girl, not little, but there's this girl who's basically an amputee, not really, but she's injured in her foot. A cripple basically is what Manon calls her. She's like, why are you here in my room cleaning my room? Are you spying on me? And the girl is like, no, I was sent here because I was told to clean. And Manon asks her, she's like, how did you get your foot broken or whatever? And she says she had an accident and her uncle didn't call for any healers, so she's basically chained so she can't run away and she's injured. Lady Marian, the one who, I think that was her name, Lady Marian, who sacrificed herself so baby Selena can run and end up in the lake or whatever, she had a daughter. Her name was Alide, and now Alide is working for Manon. Her uncle is Vernon, who works with Duke Parrington for the king. I'm sorry, but what? When that clicked in my head, I said, this woman, Sarah J. Maas, her brain, I could never. Personally, I could never. My brain literally forgets anything and everything. You're telling me shit from the prequels is connecting to this book right now? That's crazy to me. That's crazy. I sat there and I said, this woman, the way her brain works is crazy. Truly, I don't even know where to begin. Like, a genius. Truly a genius. I'm 100 pages in. I'm enjoying it very much. I don't know, because after this I'm gonna have to do the tandem read, which I was thinking about earlier today, because the books after this are Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn, and I don't even know where this could go, honestly, to be honest. I do not know. I did get a spoiler. Mind you, I am not on Throne of Glass TikTok. I don't know how I ended up there. I swear my phone is listening to me or something. But I've not been on their TikTok. I've not even searched it up because I was like, I don't want to get spoiled for anything. But I think I know of a couple that's gonna get together in this book, because I read a quote, and then once I read the quote, I read the hashtags, and the hashtags said something, but I don't know how we're gonna end up there. I don't know what could possibly get us to end up there with that couple. I'm gonna just say it because I've already said everything that I think I know. I think it's Dorian and Manon. I think Dorian and Manon end up together because he asks her what color she bleeds, and she's like, I'll bleed whatever color you want me to. I don't know if that's in this book, and I don't know if it's true that it's her who says that to him, and I don't know how, if it is true, how is that possible? How do they get together? Then Manon has to go to the castle. How does she end? I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna stop because I sound like I'm coming up with a conspiracy theory. I could be very wrong. I don't know. I'm enjoying it very much. I'm gonna continue reading. Can you imagine how I'm gonna feel once I finish the last book? 980 pages. There's no way I'm gonna finish it before the end of this year. I don't even think I'm gonna finish Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn by the end of this year. I'm gonna be honest. Maybe I will. I cannot see that happening though, because today is December 14th. I just started this. This is how much I've read. You're telling me I'm gonna finish this and start and finish 2 more books? There's no way. There's no way. It's gonna take me at least 10 days to finish the 2 books. We'll get back to you with more updates, I guess. It looks like nighttime. It's really actually 9:08 on December 17th. I finished Queen of Shadows last night. I actually spent maybe my entire day yesterday reading. It's my silent review on the book. Kale ends up telling Aelin about how to get rid of the magic. She would have to destroy the tower, the clock tower, to free magic. End up having Prince Dorian's birthday party. Selena ends up dressing up as one of the dancers that's in one of her old teacher's group for the entertainment for the party. This woman used to like teach her how to play piano and how to dance and stuff, and so when they meet again, the woman is more than willing to help her. She gets dressed up in their costume and she pretends to be like this clumsy girl who like can barely stand, and to get past the word marks, which apparently they're called word marks, not weird marks, not wired marks. I saw like a pronunciation guide yesterday on Pinterest, and apparently it's word marks. So word marks, regardless. She ends up pretending to be hit by one of the other dancers, and like she's crying and like pretending like she knows she's falling apart, and she's like, oh, she hit me, she hit me. And she's like, I need water, I need water. So one of the guards goes and gets her a bucket of water, and instead of drinking the water, she ends up like dropping the bucket of water over the word marks on the floor, and she slides across them into the castle, and her teacher ends up pretending to scold her for it, and she's like, oh, you're such a little stupid girl, you don't know anything, you're so clumsy, blah 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 blah. While they're inside the party, the dancers dance. Selena's a part of them, and they're dancing. They have these glass little roses, flowers situation, and they, at the end of the dance, they end up like throwing it on the floor. There's smoke everywhere. Selena ends up changing into like a different robe, and she ends up getting Adion out. And as they're getting out, who stops them? Anybody? The crowd? Anybody? Anybody got an idea what Sarah J. Maas, the masochist, is gonna do? Yeah, that's right. She has Dorian stop them. Prince Dorian, the one possessed by a Valk prince, stops them. And Selena's like, please don't make me do this. Please let me go. Please let me go. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. He doesn't listen. As they're fighting, Selena ends up hesitating. She's like holding the like sword over him. She's hesitating. Nesrina ends up hitting her, and then Selena ends up leaving with Adion, and then you get the point of view of Dorian, who's like, please kill me, please kill me, please kill me. And then when he doesn't get killed, he like really like, I wish they would have killed me. I don't know why they won't show me mercy. And you just see him fighting with the Valk Prince inside of him. So on their way home, the way that they sneak Adion out of the premises is that Lysandra is waiting for Aelin in a carriage. They lift up the seats. There's like a little space underneath the seat where they stash Adion there, and then they pretend to be like two ladies going to an appointment. And when they get back to Selena's apartment, Kale ends up being there, and he argues with her. He's like, oh, you were gonna kill Dorian. And she's like, I was doing him a favor. He's not in there. I wouldn't want to be living like this. I don't want him to live like this. He's gonna regret doing what he's doing if he is in there, but I don't think he's in there. And basically they end up arguing, and he says in front of Lysandra that she's a queen. And it turns out that Lysandra knew this whole entire time who Aelin was, and that she was the queen of Terrasen, and that she was Aelin. So Adion wakes up, and they end up having this little cute reunion, and it's so cute because he loves her so much. Like, you can tell by the way that he speaks of her. He's like, he sees her and then immediately starts crying. He's like bawling his eyes out. He's bawling. He cannot like think the fact that he's standing in front of his queen, and he's known her for years, and he loves her, and he's like, this is my queen, and he's like crying while he's talking to her, and it's so cute. It's really, really adorable. And then meanwhile, on the other hand, because you have Sarah J. Maas being a masochist, she'll give you like this cute little scene and then flip the page, and it's like pain. Then we get a view of Manon's point of view, where you have Duke Parrington ask her to pick a coven. Obviously, he already told her he wants a coven to do these experiments on, and instead of her having to pick, the Yellowlegs volunteer. They come to her and they're like, we would like to volunteer to do the experiments. So Duke Parrington ends up taking a coven of the Yellowlegs. Selena gets summoned. Aelin gets summoned by Erben because he wants her to fight in like this pit because he needs money. So she goes where Sam used to fight, and she ends up fighting a Valk commander, and he tells her he knows what she is, and she's like, I know what you are. And then they end up fighting, and she wins and kills him as like a payback, I guess, for it. Erben tells her where Sam is buried, where his grave is. Allied, which I think that's how you say her name. I wish there was like a pronunciation guide in all of the books because I didn't like go out of my way to find it. Alid, turns out that she has black beak blood in her, and that's why she's chained, because she can fly apparently. So her uncle knows, and she's, I believe, half-half. I believe she has a little bit of black beak blood in her. Manon ends up telling her like, hey, you can choose. You can be either under me and you can be a black beak, or I don't care what you do, and you'll get to be under your Uncle Vernon. She chooses to be a witchling, and Manon gets this lesson from one of, I believe, her second, who tells her that witches come from the offspring of Valgs and Fae. The king burns the Shadow Market completely, which is where Kale and his people were meant to meet. And Kale comes to Selena and he's like, this is all your fault. You did this. If you had never showed up, this would have never happened. The king burned
the shadow market because he was sending a message to you. Because why else would he use fire? Because Kale is a bitch in this, and 75% of this book. 75% of this book. Like, I get, you know, he's been through a lot, but he's like, you've been with Rowan while I suffer. You have not suffered at all. Like, shut up. Shut up. Aedion wants to take the blood oath for Aelin, and Aelin doesn't tell him that Rowan has already taken the blood oath for her. She lies to him, basically, and then later on when he does find out that he can't take the blood oath, which is meant to be his. Honestly, if I was Aedion, I'd be pissed, because he spent his whole entire life waiting for this blood oath, only for Aelin to give it to Rowan. I know she did it to save his life, but Aedion literally, like, she didn't know that he was still alive, which is fine. But I do feel bad for him, because he's like, he spent this whole entire life not blaming Aelin for anything, not even thinking badly of her. He was like, ride or die for her. And then he can't even take the blood oath, the one thing that he's wanted his entire life. And when he finds out that he can't take the blood oath, him and Aelin end up fighting, and he, like, says some really rude things to her, and she says some rude things to him too, and then they end up separating. Aelin sneaks out and follows a Valk commander into the sewers, which she has a fear of the sewers because she almost drowned in them in one of the earlier books. She sees that the Valk prince is being commanded by a wardhound who the king can see through its eyes and speaks through its mouth, which is terrifying. And she's like, Rowan ends up making a comeback because he was following Lorcan, I don't know how to say his name, but he was following him. He ends up going to where Selena is, so he ends up coming back, and Selena sees him, and they have like this whole thing where she runs into his arms and hugs him, and then the minute she sees him, she's like bawling and whatever, and then they take him back to the warehouse, and she gives him a bath and lets him wear Sam's clothes, and we see that he had cut his hair. He didn't want it in the way when he fights, because obviously he doesn't have his Fae powers when he is there, because the magic is stifled. So that was very, very cute, I'm not gonna lie. Then we find out that Rowan's friend Gabriel, we see Gabriel getting a tattoo by Rowan, and Rowan tells Aedion that Gabriel is his father, which is not what I expected. We find out that Rowan took the blood oath. They end up having a fight. Aelin ends up telling Rowan that she wants him to sleep in the same bed as her. That's what they used to do. But he tells her that he can't sleep with her in the same bed because what message would it send to people, and what would people think? You know, she's his queen. They can't do the same things here. And she tells him, I could not care less. You're sleeping in the same bed as me. And he's like, it's inappropriate. And he's like, oh, you appropriate. I'll show you inappropriate. And she ends up wearing like this short little sleeping gown. And it's like lace and short. And when she comes out, he's like, she lays in bed with him. And he's like, where's the rest of this? And where's the bottom of this? And she goes, there is no bottom. It gets hot. It gets so hot. And I can't sleep at night and sweat. And then she's like, is there a specific color you would like me to wear? And he's like, gold. Like, that was something. It was so funny. Manon walks in on Duke Parrington using Kaltain's shadow fire. She like has this fire that she's torturing somebody with because he's making her do it. And she's like, what is this? What is this thing? And he's like, it's shadow fire. Comes from Kaltain. Kaltain has already had it this entire time. And then he's like, oh, you didn't know what we're doing over here. And then Duke Parrington tells Manon that her grandmother has been making weapons for them, for Duke Parrington's army. He tells her that the experiments that they were doing on the Yellow Legs were working. Vernon harasses Kaltain. Vernon, not Duke Parrington. Vernon, Elid's uncle, harassing Kaltain in one of the like stairways, and Elid finds them. She basically gets her out. Her uncle knows that she's a Blackbeak. He knows what she is, and he tells her, I was wondering when your Blackbeak blood will show. We find out that Lysandra is a shapeshifter because Rowan can smell her. So at the breakfast table, they're all sitting together, and he's like, you're a shapeshifter. And she's like, oh. And she asks Selena if she's mad about it. Selena says no. Like, it's okay. I would understand why you would keep it a secret, because obviously if the king finds out, you know, it's a problem. But it's shocking that she's a shapeshifter. She doesn't even know what she doesn't even remember what she used to look like. She's just been in this shape form for so long that she was beginning to forget what she looks like. Rowena visit Sam's grave, and they put stones there, and it's so cute, and it's such a sad scene. Really, really, a lot of this book was really sad. Cut scenes of Dorian struggling with the Valk Prince inside of him, and he's like sitting there and he doesn't want to do any of the stuff that the prince wants him to do, but he has to do it. And then you flip the page and it's like a cute scene, and then you flip the page and it's Manon suffering. Speaking of Manon and Elide end up coming with a idea on how to see what experiments are happening on the yellow legs. Basically, they get like one of the ladies sick, and there's like messy clothes and there's vomit all over them because they poison her, but not enough to get blood out or kill her. And Elide ends up doing the laundry for them, and she brings it down to the cellars or wherever they're keeping the yellow legs and the stuff like that. And she ends up pretending to trip, which then the door opens and she can see inside, and she can see that the yellow legs, most of them, if not all of them, have given birth already once, and they look like they're about to give birth a second time. Like they're already pregnant again, which is insane and petrifying. If I saw that, I would pass away on the spot. Because what do you mean? It's not even been 9 months. Manon ends up fighting with Astrid, her second, or who used to be her second. Then she ends up being her third, and then they fight again, and they end up being her fourth, because Astrid is like, why are you just following blindly in your grandmother's footsteps and whatever she tells you to do, like brutality, obedience? Why are you just doing it so mindlessly? Like, these people are suffering, these are witches, and you're allowing them to suffer, you're letting this happen. Manon is like, no thoughts, head empty. No thoughts, head empty. She cannot fight against her grandma, even though she thinks it's sick. She doesn't fight against her grandmother's wishes. So then she ends up demoting Astrid to second, and then when they fight a third time to fourth, and so on and so forth. Arobin invites Adion, Selena, and Rowan to dinner, and he sends her like this body oil, which is his scent, almond, to wear, to send a sign to Rowan, obviously, that she's his, she's his property, basically. They go to dinner. She's wearing like this beautiful dress. She smells like almonds. And when they get there, they give him the Valk Prince, because that was her price for him helping getting Adion out of the king's castle, to help her with all that situation. He was like, you will get me a Valk Prince. So she gets him a Valk Prince. They go downstairs to interrogate it. She tells him that she knows that she's Aelin and that he took her amulet from her when she was young. They go back upstairs, they have dinner, Lysandra is there, but Arwen doesn't know that Lysandra and Aelin have been seeing each other, or like are friends at this point. So they're sitting there, they're having dinner, and Rowan says, thank you for the body oil. I was feeling dry, because apparently he put the body oil on him as well. And it's so funny because he like gives Aelin a look that says basically like, he never said you had to be the only one wearing it. And right as the dinner ends, she's fighting with Arobin, and she's like, I will never do anything for you again. I don't like, you messed up, basically. You've messed up my entire life. And in the end, he's like, Aelin, it'll be so good to have you back. And he slips a ring on her finger, like a black stone ring. He touches her and he feels her up, and he's like, say you love me. And she's like, I love you. And he's like, say you love me in my name. And she's like, I love you, Urban Hamel, or whatever. And then they end up leaving. He's like, don't tell anybody that you have the ring. Don't show it to anybody. And then they leave in the carriage, all of them. After they get back to the warehouse, it turns out that the ring is a fake. Aelin had somebody make a fake ring and put it on the general's arm or finger. That's the ring that he put on her. So it's fake. It's not really any like mind control or anything like that. Aelin tries to be intimate with Rowan, and she like touches his face, and she's like, looking at him all cute and stuff, and he tells her, don't touch me like that. And then that ends up with like 3 days of tension between them, because she doesn't allow him to touch her, she doesn't allow him to speak with, or like, they don't have that back and forth banter. They end up speaking in like one-worded answers, very clipped, very professional, responsible type of thing. And it sticks in her head, because I think at this point she thinks that he's her mate, because she feels a bond between them. And so that had hurt her a lot. Lysandra kills Arobin in the middle of the night. After they leave the dinner, Lysandra puts like a knife, or basically she like slits his throat in his sleep and lets him choke on his blood. And Aelin changes the will before anybody finds out. So when they get called into the meeting the next day to find out who had killed Arobin, Clarice is like, let's read the will. And Selena's like, he hasn't even been dead that long. You're already after his money. I guess we know who killed him. But they read the will, and obviously it's the one that Selena had changed, and it says that everything that Arobin owns goes to her, and she plays the rest of the assassins to get their money together to buy the guild and everything from her, so she has enough money to make an army for BTS, so she can make an army for Terrazon, for Adion to be in charge of. Duke Parrington telling Manon that he wants a coven of Blackbeaks specifically. He wants Blackbeak witches, which then sends Manon to fight with Astrid, and she's like, you're gonna give him our sisters, and they all are like, we're not gonna choose, so you might as well choose and send us, because we're not gonna give up our sisters like that. The Rowan Kale, Aelin, and Aedion, I believe Lysandra, maybe not Lysandra, they end up going to the Shadow Market and they find this place where there's a bunch of ward marks on the walls, and she uses the Damaris sword and she ends up like unlocking all these marks that are basically people's regrets and sins and stuff like that. And it tells them a story of the first king and the queen and how they had supposed to kill Erewhon, which is the Dark King, and they don't kill him. They have him like imprisoned in the amulet, the Eye of Elena, and then once they kill him, they bury him. Where? In Morath. You know who else is in Morath? Duke Parrington, Vernon, Caltaine, the Dark Army. So they think that the king is trying to raise Erewhon, trying to raise an army for him by, you know, experimenting on the Blackbeaks and raising all these Valk princes and stuff. Lorcan finds Aelin and Rowan, and they end up fighting, and she almost kills him because she sneaks out in the middle of the night, I believe, and he like catches her. And then Rowan shows up, and when they talk to him, he's like, the ring that you gave to Maeve to save Rowan basically makes you immune to the power of ward marks and like the collars and the rings. It makes you immune to that, and you gave it to her. So you gave her immunity. You effed up. Arabin has it in his will that he knows what Lysandra is and that he knows that she's a shapeshifter. So he sends it to the king, and Lysandra gets captured. Evangeline comes like to Aelin and she's like, Lysandra said if anything were to happen, I should come to you. The people have come for her. They took her. I don't know where they took her, but she's gone. The king knows what she is. And so they end up leaving for Morath. Manon, on the other hand, she has Roland, which was in the room that had the yellow legs witches in it, that Elide had seen. Roland walks in on the meeting with the Blackbeaks, and he begs Manon to kill him, basically, and she kills him. And they end up going to Morath because their grandmother, or her grandmother, is like, it's time to show the weapon. So now the king and his son, Dorian, are in Morath. The Fantastic Four, which is what I call, you know, Aelin, Rowan, Aedion, are all in Morath with Kale and Nisreen. And then you have the Blackbeaks now. Manon speaks to Dorian, which I believe in the other clip that I was filming about this, I was like, I don't know how these people are going to be together. But I guess I see it now. Dorian is like focused on Manon, and the prince inside of him, the Valk prince, is like, don't talk to her, don't talk to her, don't talk to her. And she comes up to him and she's like, hello, princeling, because her grandmother and the king are talking. While the Fantastic Four are saving Lysandra, she comes up to him and she's like, hello, princeling, and he's like, hello, witchling, and they end up talking, and Dorian comes out. And then you have the ever so iconic line where he's like, she's like, what color do you bleed? And he's like, I'll bleed whatever color you want me to. I swear to God, you have like these lines in this book that I was like, I was gobsmacked. I was shut down. I was shut up. I was silenced with a capital D at the end. Kale is now in the mindset that he should kill Dorian because he wants to do him a favor. So he like runs away from the rest of them after they catch Lysandra and save her. Kale runs away to kill Dorian, and Aelin ends up running after him to save him. And somehow Manon gets involved in this situation. Dorian ends up getting away. Kale ends up getting hurt. Rowan ends up getting an arrow in his shoulder. And when Manon fights Aelin ends up saving her, or like leaving her. She doesn't kill her because she's like, Astrid was yelling at Manon the same way that Aelin would yell at Rowan, and she thought it a bad sign to kill someone's loved one when her own loved one was hurt. In this process, Elide is trying to run away, waiting for the shipment trucks so she can get away in them. The shipment trucks never come. Vernon finds out that she's trying to run away. He captures her and he puts her in a dungeon. When Manon gets back, she ends up getting the plans from Duke Parrington. He's like, oh, you don't even know what we're doing. I don't know why you're bothering doing all of this. So he ends up giving her like the file, I guess, of basically all the things that they're gonna do with the weapon that her grandmother is making. Manon is basically disgusted by this. She hates it. Her grandmother is a fucking nightmare. She like wrote the word unclean, or like branded Astrid with the word unclean on her stomach because she had a miscarriage, I believe, Which monstrosity. Aelin pays off the debt of Evangeline and Lysandra. So basically they're both free because they're besties now. I love their friendship so much. Like the way that they've grown from hating each other in the first book because of Arwen, and now they love each other. Manon sends a letter to Aelin saying that the king is still, or the king, I keep calling him the king. Manon sends a letter to Aelin saying that the prince is still inside the body of Dorian, that he's not gone completely. All of Cale's men end up getting murdered as a sign from the king that he knows what's going on and that he knows he's involved with all of this stuff. Aelin and Cale end up going to the king. She goes to the castle and she's like, tell the king his champion is here, and she has, you know, whatever for him. And they go to the king, and the king is there, and Dorian is also there. This is when shit really hits the fan. Honestly, truly, like from here on out, it's just like pain, 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 pain. The king has Dorian whipped in front of them. Which, like, what the hell is going on? Lorcan didn't kill all the word hounds like he was meant to, and they're meant to go blow up the tower, the clock tower, while Aelin is getting the king distracted. They obviously can't because they're fighting the word hounds. Rowan ends up getting hurt, and then Rowan feels it when Dorian ends up running after Aelin and stabs her in the side, which I think at this point it's like pretty much solidified that Rowan are mates. So yeah, she runs away to get him away from the king so she can get him back. And she's like, Dorian, I know you're in there. I came back for you. I came back for you. But he stabs her in the process. And he's like, you know, he's fighting on the inside. He's like, I know this face. I know this face. I just don't know who she is. But the Valk Prince keeps shoving him down and doesn't let him talk. So he ends up stabbing Aelin. And while she's stabbing Aelin, Aelin puts the gold ring that makes him immune onto Dorian's finger. Somehow, after Aedion and Rowan end up fighting, Lorcan helps them, and they get out and they blow up the clock tower. So then magic is back. Dorian comes back because of the ring. He like shatters the little collar around his neck, and the king is speaking to them after they have him basically cornered. He's telling them that Duke Parrington is actually the Dark King, Erewhon, and that he went down there with him when they were younger into the cellars where, you know, all the crowns were and where all the keys were. Duke Parrington, or the Dark King's companion, went into the king, and he's done all he's done and tried to stifle magic to protect Dorian. And Dorian is like, don't believe him, don't believe him, don't believe him. And he blows up the glass castle and he kills the king. Somehow, Aelin gets him out and gets Cale out, even though he was like almost killed by the king. He was severely injured by the king because he was left with the king while Aelin ran away with Dorian. That's what brings Dorian back. He's like, the king is like, I killed Cale. And he's like, what did you do to Cale? What did you do to Cale? That's like his first few words when he comes back into his body. The love he has for Cale is unmatched, like truly. And honestly, Cale may have his faults, but he does love Dorian very, very much. I will say that. He spent this entire book trying to save the man. But it turns out that he's not dead. He's alive. So they all get out, sleep for 3 days. Rowan recovers his hurt leg. And when she wakes up, she goes and sees Dorian. And she goes and sees Cale. And Cale apparently he can't feel his legs. He has no feelings in his legs. And he has to go to the southern continent to get a healer because there's no more healers. They'd all died in the explosion of the glass castle, which was iconic. That whole scene you have of the like Dorian, like, it's like, don't believe him, and he's lying, and he like blows up with magic, and he blows up the entire castle, which is an action sequence if I've ever seen one, I'm just saying. On the other side of the mountain, Morath, Manon notices that Elide is gone. And at this point, Elide is being forced by her uncle Vernon to go do like this experimentation thing. He wants to put a stone in her or something like that. And she's on her way. She's been scrubbed clean after being in the cellar for like a while because nobody noticed that she was missing until Manon notices that her scent isn't there. She gets scrubbed clean by all the maids and like gets dressed in this beautiful gown and whatever. And on their way to the place, magic has already been freed. So they run into Kaltain and she's like, you can't go. They're waiting for you. They sent me to see what's taking you so long. And apparently Kaltain had killed the beast inside of her. Shadow, whatever thing possessing her, had killed it a long, long time ago. She was playing the long game, basically. So she takes Elide's dress or robe, and she gives Elide her dress. They change clothes, and she's saving Elide. She's like, check in your pocket, and in the pocket there's like this fabric. So when she was in the cellars before she was sent to Morath, Selena was also in the cellars with her, and she put like her cape around her because it was cold in the cellar. And she kept a fabric of that cape, cloak, whatever. She kept a cloth of it to remember that she basically was saved by Selena. So she tells Elide, when you go back and when you meet Selena, or when you meet Aelin, tell her that I never forgot. I will never forget that she gave me this in a cold cellar because it went a long way. Manon takes Elide and runs away. While they're flying away, she sees that Kaltain had basically set a third of Morath on fire with her shadow fire and killed herself in the process because she didn't want to live anymore with what she's done. Manon takes Elide to a place near Terrasen, and she's like, Aelin is alive, Aedion is alive, you know, go north, go to Terrasen and find them. Aelin speaks to Lysandra and gives her land and makes her a lady to rule over this land. And you have this cute ass scene between them where Lysandra is crying and Aelin is crying, and they're like bawling at each other, and she's like, I don't know what I would do with a land. I don't know how to be a lady. I don't know how to rule. And she's like, you can do it. I believe in you, and like, you're my friend, and you've saved me, and you've saved Rowan, and you've saved Aedion, and I can't thank you enough. And that is the cutest scene I've ever seen because I love them together and I love their friendship so much. And then at the end of the book, you just have basically all of them making it back to Terrasen. By all of them, I mean Lysandra, Rowan, Aelin, and Aedion. They make it back. And the scene is so cute. They're like, once you pass here, you're on Terrasen soil. And I don't even know like what's gonna happen next. Seriously, I say this every time because I really don't know. Every time I think shit is going okay, it goes severely south. I very much enjoyed this. 600 pages of excellence, pure excellence. Next, we have Empire of Storms, and Tower of Dawn, which I have heard that they're basically the same story, the same timeline, but from different points of views, from what I know. I'm going to tandem read these. There's a guide that I found somewhere. I don't believe I'll be reading them today. Probably not, because I spent like 8 hours reading yesterday and I feel pretty burnt out. So I think I'm gonna take a break today. Probably start tomorrow, which is Monday the 18th. I might be able to finish the series before the end of the year. Queen of Shadows took me over my reading goal. I'm now at 150 books, or like it helped me finish my reading goal. So that's great. I think maybe it might be my favorite so far. Sarah J. Maas has a way of writing things that keep you involved in the story. Like, I genuinely feel like these people are my friends and that I know them. I might be okay with Kale now. I don't know. Dorian wants Kale to work under him once he gets back, once he gets healed and stuff. And I don't know how Dorian is gonna be a king because, you know, he's already been through so much. All he's done is love people, and all Sarah J. Maas has done is give him pain. Put them two together, that is a behemoth. Empire of Storms is 693. Tower of Dawn looks significantly less. 664 pages. Girl, after I finish all these books, I'm gonna count how many pages there are in the entire series because I should have read the series a lot earlier. I don't know. The amount of footage I have. Oof. I will update you when I'm reading again. I have started Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I have printed out the guide of the tandem read of them. As you can see, I've already read some. So far, I'm really enjoying it. Empire of Storms has been really, really interesting and really already action-filled. We open with the story of Elena and Gavin as they fight against Erewhon. Basically know that they're gonna die. And they know that Erewhon is after Gavin because he's human. And so Elena's like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fight him and I need you to come with me to distract him, basically. Gavin is like, this is a suicide attempt, and she's like, well, we gotta do what we gotta do. They head on because they're all gonna die regardless. The actual book, that was like the prologue. We get into the actual book and it opens with Elide is still moving forward north to Terrasen from where Manon had left her in Queen of Shadows, and finds these two witches in the woods after she's been walking and she hasn't been stopping anywhere. She's been eating like fruit from outside with the dirt in it and like drinking water, and she got sick because she drank the wrong water at some point, and she feels like she's being watched. And we find out that the person that is watching her is actually Lorcan, Lorcan. He went into the witch coven at a meeting and he like killed 3 of them and took a 4th. And so they're after him because he's trying to get information out of them and he's trying to interrogate them. So when he sees Elide, he's like, oh, she doesn't smell like human, fully human. So he starts watching her because he thinks that she would be perfect to interrogate. When it comes to Aelin, she's being watched by these little fellas, little fae people that leave them gifts, and she like has this scene where she kisses Rowan and they're like, one day we're gonna have a moment where we're able to be together, because apparently she loves him and she's loved him for a really long time, but neither of them has said anything to the other, and she doesn't know if he feels the same, which obviously as a reader it's very clear to us that he feels the same. Aedion had sent a letter to all the lords that he trusts in Terrasen to have a meeting with them, to show them Aelin and that she's still there and that she's the rightful queen. The lords don't show up, but they send a messenger saying, come meet us in this tavern. They go meet them in the tavern. So they meet with Lord Darrow, Murtaugh, and Ren. They're all like not really nice to them at all. Lord Darrow specifically is a bitch. He's so mean to everybody there. Tells Aelin that her court is made up of whores and that he doesn't really believe Lysandra and he doesn't believe her claim over the land that Aelin had given her. He tells her, oh, you've disappeared for years and years and years and left us to fight while you have been like serving the king and serving Dorian. And he tells her like, I will not accept you at the throne. None of us accept you on the throne other than one family. And he gives her like this paper with all their signatures, all the lords' signatures, saying that they don't believe her claim to the throne and that they don't want her to come and be queen. She's just a princess by name, by blood. He's like, oh, you've lived, serving the king and being his champion, and your court is made up of a fae prince that serves Maeve, and he shares your bed. And she basically like has to hold herself back a lot from screaming at him, which is more than good for her, because I personally would have had a lot to say. I would have had a lot to say. Let's just say that. He tells her basically, if you come to Orinth and try to take your throne, I will take it as an act of war. It would be treason. We're not accepting you on the throne. Don't even come and show your face in Orinth. The meeting ends with them being like, well, I mean, we'll take your words into consideration. You don't know what we're trying to do. Aelin is trying to get men money to help her revive Terrasen back so she can fight in the war against Erewhon. And they leave the meeting by leaving Evangeline with Murtaugh so she can go get lady training in the court of Terrasen after a lot of like convincing from both Lysandra and Aelin, because she obviously doesn't want to leave them. She's been with them this whole entire time. And Aelin basically convinces her to go, and she goes, and she's like, make sure you like take notes of what they're doing in court and don't let them mistreat you, and take care of Fleetfoot. And they say goodbye to her and they all leave to the Dead Islands because Aelin gets word that Erewhon is basically trying to plot against Rifthold and trying to get Dorian. Dead or alive, they want Dorian. Dorian is the target. The grandmother comes to Morath, Merrin's grandmother. Harrington is no longer there. It's just Erewhon in his actual form. And he sends Merrin and the 13th to go to Rifthold to start a war and to get the king, Dorian, and to bring him back to Erewhon and to destroy the glass wall that is still there. So when Aelin gets word of that, she sends Rowan to go save Dorian, and she's like, bring him to the Dead Islands. We'll meet you there. It'll take us 2 weeks, but with you, because you have, the wind and whatever, and you can move faster, then bring him to the Dead Islands and we'll talk there. But if he's not able to do that, then he has like these liquids with him that will probably kill him and Dorian. So they don't end up being tortured or killed or whatever. They would die by the poison that he has. And that's all that happens in the Empire of Storms book. Now on to Tower of Dawn. You have Mr. Cale Westfall. He's down in the dumps. He's in Antica with Nisreen, and he's been on a ship for like weeks, I believe. And once they get there, his job is to get the Kagan and his heirs to give an army to Rifthold to fight against Erewhon and to find a healer that can fix his legs. And he is he's been promoted from captain of the guard to hand of the king. So he still works under Dorian and he hates it. He's like, I hate it. This feels like a joke to me. He hates his legs. He hates his life because what's new? It's Kale and he hates everything and everyone. I had a moment where I felt bad for him for like a second, like a fleeting second. I was like, oh, poor guy, his legs don't work. And he's, used to like being that guy. He's that guy. He's him. But he's not enough and I don't like him. And all he does is whine. Like, I know your legs don't work, but get it together. You, like, still work for the king. You still have a position. Why are we already deciding that your legs are never gonna work? It's fucking annoying. Anyways, I've only read 1 chapter of this and 5 chapters of Empire of Storms. I thought I'd update now so I don't end up having to talk for like 20, 30 minutes at a time. I'm gonna get back into reading and I will update you once I've read some more.
We are on my bed. I don't know if you can see me very well, but I am tired and it's been a long day and I just want to talk about my book. So we're gonna talk about it. I'm enjoying it very, very much. Today is December 20th. Manon lands in Rifthold. The yellow legs were already there, and one of them like flies in and tries to kill Dorian, and she doesn't allow that to happen. She like shoots her down and she runs down to Dorian and she tells him to run. And he's like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you telling me to run? And she's like, don't ask me any questions. Just know, like, I'm doing it to benefit me and no one else. She tells him, like, don't trust Erewhon because he's a Valk prince. He's not, or like the Dark King, and that he's not who people think he is. And then after that, he tells her to fight with him, and she says that she can't because obviously, like, it's not possible for her to do that. So he ends up running because Rowan ends up coming and almost kills Manon, and Dorian is like, no, don't kill her. And so Rowan spares her and he saves Dorian and they run and they leave Manon there. Meanwhile, on Nesrine and Kale's story in Tower of Dawn, they meet with the Kagan when they land and they give him like all these jewels that Selena had given them, that Aelin had given them, that she had stolen, that she didn't want. She gives it to them and she's like, use these for like bargaining chips. And the Kagan is like, I don't want these. I don't want to help you. I know you're here to ask me for help with fighting against Erewhon and I am not helping you, and I don't like your old king, and I don't like Dorian, and I don't like Aelin, so I'm not helping you. I don't want nothing to do with this, and you can of course go get healed if the healer agrees to help you and agrees to heal you. So feel free to go look at that, but other than that, I'm not helping you with anything. We do get this scene where we find out that basically they have to fight in their culture, or like their kingdom, I guess. They have to fight to be the heir, and they have to like birth heirs afterwards. And you find out that their youngest sister is dead. There's supposed to be 6 heirs, but there's only 5 because the youngest was, they say that she'd committed suicide, but one of the siblings doesn't believe that. One of the brothers doesn't believe that she had committed suicide and that it was like foul play, and that there may be like one of Erewhon's men in the castle, and he tells Kale to keep an eye out for him. He offers for them to come to dinner, to like family dinners every night, to scope out everybody that's there to see if any of them could be the spy. The Kagan tells Kale and Nesrine what had happened in Rifthold with all the witches and all the wyverns or weaverns, whatever, and that basically it was decimated and that Dorian is nowhere to be found. And so Nesrine like really goes through it, and she runs away to like in their room and like locks herself away in her room and leaves Kale all on his own. Mind you, Kale can't walk or do anything on his own basically, but yeah, she just leaves him. She just disappears into the room, and it's very, very tense between them, and you don't really get any like interactions between them. It's very tense. You can tell it's not what it was in the previous books. So there's the creatures that are haunting Elide and Lorcan, and they end up talking to them, or Lorcan ends up talking to them and asking them like, what are you looking after? And he finds out that they're looking for Elide, and that they're called Ilkin. They're like 8 feet tall. with bat-like noses, and they're very, very scary and like have this dark power around them. And they're hunting after Elide, and he tells them that he doesn't know who she is or he's never seen her, and then they end up traveling together. Back on Tower of Dawn, the healer that is meant to be working on Kale, her name is Urine Towers. In the Assassin's Blade prequel novels, it's called, I think, The Assassin and the Healer, one of them. And she's the same woman that Aelin had helped run away, and she taught her how to fight for herself. In this book, she's a healer. She's like gotten to this place, and she's training under this woman. Her name is Hafiza. She's working to leave and to go back to Rifthold so she can help her people, because that's the one thing that she wants to do, is that she wants to be useful in this war. So she runs away. So she is training to become a healer so she can finish the apprenticeship, basically, to leave and go back. But her last test before she leaves is to work on Kale, and she really doesn't want to. She doesn't like him. She's like, he served the older king and he served Dorian, and both of them were corrupt men, and I don't like them and I don't want to help him. But they tell her that she can't leave unless she helps Kale. Eventually, Hafiza ends up convincing Urine to just look at him, to go take a look at him and talk to him before she decides that she doesn't want to help him. So she does end up going to Kale to see him, and she like assesses him, and she asks him what his name is, how old he is. And the whole time she's writing this info in her book while she's assessing him, she's just writing her mother's name over and over and over again. She's with him the entire time that she's assessing him, but then in the end she does agree to help him and to heal him, because that's basically her ticket out. And Nasreen ends up leaving to go see her family because she has family in town. And Sartak, which is one of the men, one of the heirs to the Kagan, goes with her. He like escorts her to go to see the town and like to go see her family. Back on Empire of Storms, Manon ends up going under trial for killing the Yellow Legs Witch. She gets there and her grandmother is there and all the matrons are there, and she is basically being questioned. The blue blood that she saved during the games, because there was like a witch that she saved from her death in the games, the witch ends up speaking for her. She's like, this woman doesn't have like, you know, she's not a kin slayer or anything like that. The reason that she might have killed the Yellow Legs Witch is because of pride or whatever. And they do agree that she's safe, and or like they do agree that to a certain degree Manon might have done it just out of pride because she wanted to kill Dorian because that was her prize, but they don't really know the truth. Regardless of all of that, the matrons agree that blood must be paid with blood, and that her second Astrid would die to pay for her debt, to pay for the blood debt. Which is the same girl that Manna's grandma had thrown her stillborn into the fire and branded her with the word unclean on her stomach. When I tell you, when I read that, my blood was boiling. Like, I actually was sitting there and I was like, Sarah J. Maas's mind is crazy. Simply crazy. Dorian and Rowan are on a boat going to Skulls Bay, because that is where he's meant to meet Aelin. And on the way there, on the boat, they're talking about how Rowan is helping Dorian train, basically the same way that he'd helped Aelin in the Air of Fire book. He helps Dorian by, like, you know, creating a ball of ice and melting it, and creating a ball of ice and melting it over and over and over again. In Tower of Dawn, Urine is working on Kale. And while she's working on him, he's telling her about the Valk princes and the collars that were around the necks, or the rings. She goes to the library to do research on the topic because she has like a theory that she wants to work on. And while she's working on that theory, is being hunted by this darkness, and she almost ends up being killed. They do find a dead healer, and there's like these two girls that are there also, and she pretends that she has somewhere to go, that someone is expecting her, so the Valk Prince doesn't get her, but she runs and she almost gets taken by the darkness, but somehow she makes it out. Aedion, Aelin, Lysandra, they make it to the temple where she's meant to go. She clears it out. Aelin clears out the era because, you know, she basically is like, whoever's staying in here can go, and if they don't go, and if they don't listen to me, I'm gonna kill them with my fire. And the one man that everybody follows is like, I'm not leaving. And when he refuses to leave, she basically starts like a fire and starts basically incinerating everyone. And so most of them run away, but then the rest of them end up being burned to ashes. She ends up going out of the temple and speaking with Brennan. Brennan is her distant relative, I guess, and he tells her that she has to find a key. She cannot do anything other than find a key because this key is very, 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 very necessary. And that's all he tells her. He doesn't tell her any other info because for some reason, when these visions come to her, or like when she talks to Elena or when she talks to Brennan, they give her like the vaguest of details, which I'm like, if that were me and I was being told to do all this stuff, like I would want to know why. Because why are you just telling me find a key and then dipping? Because what does that mean? Like, what kind of key? What does that mean? You just expect me to do with no questions. Shit really hits the fan. Because as she's walking out, they get approached by this Valk prince who is dressed as the overseer, the chief overseer from Endovir, who used to whip her. When I tell you, my mouth dropped open. Because imagine your biggest nightmare, like the one man you hate the most, showing up. Literally, if you try to put yourself in her shoes, I cannot imagine the horror I would feel to be like, oh my god. Like Valk Prince or not, I'd be shook. Turns out that it's Erewhon in his body, in the chief overseer's body, and he's like taunting Aelin the entire time, and then he dips. Manon goes to kill Astrid because she's like, this is my kill, she is my second, I want to kill her, I want to make it quick, I don't want these matrons to kill her because they're going to make it even more difficult for her, and which is 100% I agree, she should definitely be the one to do it. But as she's killing her, Astrid turns around to her and she's like, bring our people home. And she turns around, she tells her to run, and then she turns and aims the weapon at her grandma, and she starts fighting her grandma. Which character development? Manon's character development is crazy. Because if you think about it, this is the same person who was raised with brutality, obedience, and violence, like in her blood. She was taught that she's like nothing other than a weapon. And now she tells her second to run to save her life, and she turns and fights her grandma instead. The shit that really, really cemented my hatred for her grandma, because as if it hadn't already been set in there, like, pretty deep. Her grandmother turns around and tells her, like, I thought I beat that out of you. You think your mom died during childbirth? She didn't. I killed her with my own 2 hands. Because apparently her father is a Crocan prince, and that makes Manon Crocan queen, the lost Crocan queen. What? Sorry, what? My jaw was on the floor. Manon has spent the entire book, the entirety of Queen of Shadows, from the very first meeting we have with her. She's like, these Crocans, we hate them. We're like, they're basically like killing them to extinction. And now you're telling me that she's their lost queen. She's the rightful heir to the throne. She has not known this entire time, and her mother hadn't died of childbirth. Her grandmother had basically stolen her to turn her into this person that she's not. So somehow, with the thanks of Abraxos, Manon ends up fleeing, and she's barely holding on to her life this entire time because her stomach is like falling out basically. Yrene tries to help Cale with his injury, and she's like putting her hands on his back and like feeling for it and stuff, and she gets in there, but she ends up being like hit with this energy, the shadow inside of Cale. Like apparently the power that had hurt Cale left an echo in there, and it really doesn't like Yrene's magic, so it makes it even harder for her to help him. And the entire time that she's trying to help him, he's basically screaming in agony the entire time. But Yrene is that bitch. Even though if I didn't like her in the beginning, I really love her. She ends up taking Cale riding. Like she gets him the saddle, the specific saddle that he can sit in so he can ride. So he's not just sitting in the chair the entire time. He's a piece of shit because she asks him to help her teach this class that she helps teach to help women like learn self-defense basically. She goes to his quarters, I guess, at dawn, and they practice riding, and they practice like getting him into the saddle and out of the saddle until later when the class is happening. And when they get to the class, Irene tells the girls to help him out of his saddle, and he hates it. The entire time he's like giving her this like stank ass face, and when they get back to his place, he yells at her and he's like, you paraded me around, you made me feel like shit, you know how embarrassing it was to be paraded around like that when I can't even walk, when I can't move, I don't like that you did that, blah blah blah. And he's basically a bitch to her the entire time about it. She ends up, after they fight and whatever, she like shuts him up, and she ends up working on his back for a little bit longer. And as she's working on his back, the more she works on his back and pushes against this force that's inside of him, the more she starts to get like to feel it, and her nose starts bleeding and she's bleeding. And after like she's, you know, calming down and whatever, they drink tea, and Kale tells her about what had happened with Dorian and how he ran away and how he's a coward and an oath breaker and blah blah blah, all these fucking stupid thoughts that would play on his mind constantly. He's like, I'm an oath breaker, I ain't shit, which is true, you're not shit, but not for the reasons that you think you're not. You're just shitty because you're shitty to everyone around you. They continue on with this the entire time because Urine has a theory, and she's like continuing to work on him and continuing to like work on this magic that's inside of him that's left an echo, and he begins to move his toes. He's able to move his toes, which is a miracle because he's never been able to do that, but he's able to do it now. And this entire time, Nasreen isn't with him because there's like a lot of space between them, a lot of distance, and so she's hanging out with Sartak this entire time, and meanwhile he's spending more time with Irene. Back to Empire of Storms, you have Elide and Lorcan trying to get out of this town that they're in, but they can't really get out because, or like they can't continue moving to run away towards the north, toward Terrasen, because she has a limp, a very noticeable limp, and there's like guards stationed at every town, like looking for her, checking carriages. So he helps her heal like a little bit of her limp, and they pretend to be married, which I love. I love when that happens. I love when they have to pretend, and force proximity, even better. I love it. I love it. I knew something was going to happen between them, mind you. I knew something was going to happen between them. But she pretends to be his wife and he pretends to be her husband, and they end up getting with this caravan that is traveling because they're like, oh, you know, we used to work with Baba Yellowlegs, but she died, and there's like some foul play happening, and somehow Elide convinces them to let them join their little carnival tour situation, and now that she doesn't have the limp anymore, they can travel along with them, and it protects her too because the men won't flirt with her or try to like assault her if she's married, and they know that she's married to Lorcan. Rowan and Dorian end up meeting with the pirate lord in Skulls Bay because they arrive, and the pirate lord tells them that Parrington had issued a decree signed by a majority of lords and ladies naming Dorian an enemy to the kingdom, and anybody who allies with him too is also a enemy to the kingdom. Holland is Parrington's heir. Holland is Dorian's younger brother. Holland is now heir to the throne and the crown prince. While they're talking with the pirate lord, guess who shows up? Fenris and Gabrielle, which now are enemies to Rowan because Rowan works for not their queen, and they're blood sworn to Maeve, and they have like this argument, and they end up telling Rowan that Maeve is sending an armada to Morath to help Erewhon, and that she sent Fenris and Gabrielle to kill Lorcan because he is working against her, basically. She's helping Morath, basically. That's what she's doing. Maeve is basically helping Morath and helping Erewhon. In this all chaos, Rowan tells Gabrielle that he has a son, and that his son is Aedion, and Gabrielle is like shook about it. He's like, I have a son, let me meet him, I have a son. And Rowan is like, I'm not gonna choose when you meet him, he's gonna choose when you meet him. Menon almost gets killed by a bloodhound that is sent by Erewhon while she's like trying to find a place to rest for a little bit because Abraxos is like trying to help her, but while she's like resting and drinking water, she ends up being hunted by this bloodhound sent by Erewhon to find her because he wants her to come back because she's the Croaking Queen, and she ends up escaping like within an inch of her life. Kale spends more time with Urine by running errands with her for like an entire day. He goes with her to heal like a pregnant woman and some other woman and some other people. Then they have a party later that night, and when he goes to the party, he goes with Nasreen, but his eyes are entirely on Urine the entire time. He's like, oh my god, she's beautiful. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And they end up being separated by Hasar, which is the princess, the heir to Kagan, one of the heirs, and she separates them. She separates Nasreen, and Nasreen ends up sitting with Sartak for a little bit, and Kale is with Urine for a little bit, and he's like, he looks at her like she basically put the moon and the stars up in the sky. End up sitting there and talking for a little bit at the party, and Kale knows, and he sees that he feels that way for her. He almost leans in to kiss her, and then he notices Nasreen's eyes on him, and he knows that she knows. He knows that she knows that he feels a little bit more for Urine than he should, which honestly, same. Nasreen should have noticed a lot earlier if she really cared for Kale like that. I feel like if my man was spending that much time with someone else, I would care, you know? But then obviously the reason that Nasreen isn't showing that much interest in Kale and Urine being together for so long is because that she has feelings for Sartak. She's beginning to spend a lot more time with Sartak. So I guess it's even. That night, because Kale feels really, really bad about spending so much time with Urine and feeling that way for Urine, he tells Nasreen to come lay with him and like talk to him and to find out what she's been doing with her days, how her family is, because she's been spending a lot of time with her family and like flying on this creature with Sartak. And they end up sitting there and talking the entire night, and she sees that his toes twitch in his sleep, but he hasn't told her anything, and she cries. But yeah, he hasn't told her that his toes have been moving or that he's making any progress. And when Urine comes in at dawn, because she told him the day before that she would come in at dawn, when she comes in at dawn, she sees that Nasreen and Kale are in bed together, and his hair is messy, and they look like they'd done something, even though they hadn't. And Urine is like devastated basically, so it basically confirms that she has feelings for Kale. Like, even though she didn't like him and she couldn't stand him in the beginning, she for sure has feelings for him. Then she's like, don't worry about it, like, do you want me to make a thing for her to take so she doesn't get pregnant? He's like, no, she's already been taking it. And they get over the awkwardness, and she starts to work on him, and while she's working on him, he gets all these flashbacks of his time in court with Dorian and his time at his father's court and how abusive his father was and how he gave him a scar to like fight against that memory. She gives him a memory of her mother and how her mother had spoken to her when she was younger and stuff. And when Kale comes out of that memory, he finds that Urine is like outside outside crying because she missed her mother's voice. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in a really long time. At the end of that session, he can feel sensations in his legs. She is that girl, period. She is the it girl. Main vocal, main lead, like visual of the group, face of the group. Aelin makes it to Skulls Bay, and while this is how you find out that Aelin is in Skulls Bay, because Rowan and Dorian go to Rolf, which is the Pirate King, to Rolf's office, and they find her sitting there in his office, in his chair, and she's pretending to be Selena, and she has banter with Rowan and Dorian, and she basically flirts with Rowan, and he's like, oh, I'm taken, and she's like, oh, she must be so lucky, your girl must be so lucky, and he's like, I'm the lucky one. Lysandra comes in, shapeshifted as Aelin, and they look exactly the same. And when Rolf is like, what the fuck is going on? Why Aelin doesn't have a twin? What? Selena doesn't have a twin. What is going on here? And she's like, Aelin and Selena are one and the same. I am the queen of Tirison, and I am Selena Sardodian. And both her and Dorian basically try to plea their case and be like, hey, fight with us. Fight against Erewhon. Help us. Make it known after the war is over that we are your allies. We'll give you the Lord title. He doesn't give them an answer right away, but Gabrielle shows up also, and now that Aedion is also there, he demands to meet Aedion, and Lysandra takes him away and doesn't let him meet him just yet because she doesn't want him to meet him just yet, not like this at least. So they end up going away, and then later on at night, Aedion is talking to Lysandra, which I'm telling you, there's something that's gonna happen between Adion and Lysandra. There has to be, because their chemistry is so unmatched. You can already tell the couple dynamic between certain characters. Like you have Manon and Dorian, and you have Aelin and Rowan, and you have Adion and Lysandra. I feel like something is gonna happen between them for sure. While they're talking about his father, Adion asks Lysandra if she would go meet his father with him the next day, and she agrees. You wouldn't ask a random stranger to go with you to meet your father for the first time. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be something there. They're gonna end up together. What? Like, if they don't, I'm gonna be outraged. Alide tells Lorcan about Vernon and about how he had captured her and left her in a dungeon, and how he had treated her and how her leg had gotten hurt and he didn't get her a healer. And Lorcan offers to kill Vernon. You remember how I just said that Lysandra and Adion belong together? I'm telling you, if Alide and Lorcan don't end up together, I'm gonna be really upset. I feel like he actually feels something for her. And I feel like she was gonna find like safety in him, because she's never been safe. She's never been protected. Not by anyone. And this is the first time somebody's protecting her. But yeah, that's it so far. I'm really enjoying them. I'm really enjoying the tandem read. Even though it feels a lot slower, because I'm obviously reading 2 books at once. I feel like I'm gonna feel really accomplished when I finish this series, but also I'm really, really sad because I'm so attached to this, like, to every single character in this series, and we meet so many of them that I don't know possibly where this can go. But I'm really enjoying it. I've been staying up until like 1 in the morning reading, which I haven't done in years. And not just because I'm making this video, because I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm really beginning to enjoy Selena as a character, Aelin as a character. And I just love the dynamics so much. I will update you when I finish. I'll probably finish tonight because it's only 10:30. And I'm going to continue reading. I'm going to feel like a real accomplished girl once I finish this tandem read and finish Kingdom of Ash, because, girl, 980 pages, a lot can happen, and I'm scared. I'm real scared.
I don't think you're ready. Look at this. I have finished Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I finished them last night after I filmed the little update that I was filming for this. And let's talk about it, because holy shit, did a lot of stuff happen. I didn't even know how to process. I'm still like my mind cannot fathom where we ended up, how we ended up there, how we're gonna get out of this situation. Let's talk about it. Sartak ends up asking Nasreen to go with him on this trip for like 3 weeks because he wants to go find some more information about whatever it is that was hunting Yrene in the library. She agrees to go without saying goodbye to Kale. She just leaves him like a little note, and she leaves her family a note, and she just dips with him. She agrees to go because she's like, well, Kale promised me an adventure, so I'm gonna go, which is good for her. After Kale finds the note from Nasreen, he ends up being so freaking rude to Yrene, and he fights with her. He's like, oh, I've been fighting with the king for all these years, and I've been trying to find a solution for all of this. What have you been doing? You haven't been doing anything. And after he like basically chews her out for being a kind, nice person to him, because he's a douchebag, he gets mad at her instead. And so when they fight, she leaves, and as she's leaving, she runs into Cashin, which is one of the heirs, and then she turns around to go back to Kale's room, and as she's running to Kale's room, she ends up being hunted by the Valk Prince again, and they're after her for it. And so she runs and runs and runs and ends up coming back to Kale's room, and like he ends up helping her escape, and like they go out to fight with the Valk Prince, but the Valk Prince is no longer there. And so Kale decides to go train with the captain of the guard because he needs to like do some exercises to help the atrophy in his muscles. Which I gotta say, the way that Sarah J Maas wrote the struggle of Kale needing a wheelchair and needing assistance, and the way that he acts with it, that was really well written, because I feel like I never would have thought about half the things that Kale does, like how hard it is for him to roll over, and the way he feels when people try to help him or look at him with pity. I really thought it was interesting that she wrote about a character like that. Gideon meets with his dad. He takes Lysandra with him, and he meets with his dad. And when he meets with his dad, he is like livid the entire time. He basically chews him out for leaving his mom and for working for Maeve and for not being there, and how his mom was like the strongest person that he knows, and now she had fought until her last breath for him. His dad basically didn't do anything and he's useless, and Gabrielle is like, please listen to me, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had a son, I tried my best to protect you and protect her. Aedion is just not hearing it. And then we get news that the Morath army is headed towards Ilwe, because of them going to Ilwe to like destroy the town and the city basically. Aelin is like livid because that's the place that she's promised Nehemia to save. So asks Rolf to help her get the Mycenians, which are like a shadow people that don't really show up. They're hidden. Nobody sees them. They don't fight for anyone. You can't find them. The only way that they would come out is if they see the sea dragon. And guess what? Lysandra is a shapeshifter. So what does Queen do? As a queen does. Lysandra shifts into a sea dragon to get the Mycenians out, to agree to help them. Honestly, the way like Aelin's mind works is crazy. I personally would not have had that thought in my head at all. No thoughts had empty up in here. Aelin uses her powers while she's on her own ship with Rowan and everybody else. She uses her own powers to try to fire against the Morath army ships and the shadow ships. And while she's doing all of that, Diana, which is a goddess, possesses her body and speaks through Aelin. And this is what she says. I wrote it down. She said, find the key and put the keys back with the lock, and that flame and iron bound together merge into silver. And she needs to learn what must be found. Which, after finishing the book, is a crazy thing. Because all of this literally, like, the way that Sarah J. Maas had created this series is that everything weaves together so beautifully, like things from the Assassin's Blade. The prequels are adding up, like, in the series. And I'm like, she's a genius. Her mind. Because Aelin is so pissed that she's been possessed by this goddess, she can't control her power and she ends up hitting her own ship. And when she hits her own ship, the ship starts sinking, and Fenris tries to help her out by getting her out of the water and getting her to shore to where Rowan waits for her. And this entire time, Lysandra, as a sea dragon, is still fighting with the ships, and she almost dies because everybody's shooting at her. So Dorian tries to help her, but nobody comes to his post where he's posted at. She ends up hitting the ships with her tail. Aedion is watching her, like, panicked. When I told you last night that I think that there's gonna be something between Aedion and Lysandra, I was correct. While she's fighting with the sea wyverns, she barely gets out. She hits like the last ship and she dips. She gets out of the water, and Aedion like sprints to her. He's running to her Hal Assen because that's his girl for real. And when he gets there, he tells her that she can't die because he wants to marry her. He's like, I will marry you one day. You cannot die on me. I told y'all. Literally, I told y'all that there was going to be something between them, and I was correct because I'm right. Because I can read on tension between characters. That's all I'm saying. And I love them together. I really do. After the whole situation with the ship, and Aelin is safe, Lysandra is safe with Aedion, Manon is with Dorian, Aelin and Rowan end up telling each other that they love each other on the beach, and he's like, I thought you were gonna die. I thought I was gonna lose you. I feel so afraid when I lose you. And they end up sleeping together. They end up being intimate on the beach. The first time he takes her is on the beach. And mind you, they go for multiple rounds because Sarah J. Maas will not allow for Smut to be lackluster after we've been waiting for what, 7 books at this point. In the beginning, I really wasn't sure about them being mates because I was like, there's nothing there. Can a person have more than one mate? Which was answered in this book, because Sarah J. Maas will not let any loose points. She will connect the dots. With the necklace, they summon Elena, and Elena comes and tells them that her mother was Mala, the firebringer goddess, and that she needs to go to Ilwe to find a key. Everything about a goddamn key. She tells her because Diana and her father, Brannon, had told her about finding this key, that this key must be very, very important, and that she needs to go find it. While they're leaving for Ilwe, there's like this wyvern that's flying over them, and wyvern that's flying over them, and they are about to shoot it down when Dorian is like, stop, don't do it. And guess who is on the wyvern? Guess who is flying over them? None other than Miss Manon Blackbeak. She's flying over them on the verge of death. She's like, her guts are spilling. She's dying, and Abraxos sets her down, and they basically like chain her up but heal her and put her in a room. Lorcan and Alide, and they're talking about like this conversation was so cute because I love Alide so much. So Lorcan asks her if she's ever been with a man, and she's like, no, I've never felt the need to. And while they're talking about that stuff, they get surrounded by these Ilkin, and he tells her to run, so she runs and hides. And while he's talking to them, and they tell him who she is, because she goes to hide, and he talks to them, and they're like, we're looking for Alide. She's a lady of like Paranth, and she needs to be found because her mother used to work for Aelin and blah blah blah. And now that he knows the truth, he's like, oh my god, she's lied to me this entire time, because she's been going by Marion, because Marion is her mother's name. So he's very, very pissed off. And after the Ilkin leave, he ends up confronting her about that, and they fight. And she's like, you never told me the truth either, and why should I tell you the truth when I don't know what you are gonna do with me? You're a strange man I don't know. And then there's like distance between them now. But he realizes that he's falling for her, because it's true. Because he's falling for her. I told y'all, Alide and Lorcan make a lovely couple. Which now that I know the ending makes me mad, because they don't. They end up like making up, and they run away because they get hunted by these shadows, the whatever they are. They get hunted by them, so they run away and try to find someplace else to go. Lorcan ends up telling Alide that Aelin and Selena are the same person, that she's been looking for the same person this entire time, that they're not a separate entity, like two different people. And she gets mad at him, naturally so, because he's known this entire time, and they end up fighting again, because all they do is fucking fight. They fight again over him lying to her, because you've known this entire time who she's looking for and why she's looking for them, and you didn't tell her because you're a piece of shit. Manon wakes up, and Dorian has been taking care of her this entire time. Talks to her, and they call each other Princeling and Witchling, which is so fucking cute. I love them together. If Dorian loses this woman, I will lose my mind. Because everybody else at the end of the book, not really, most of the people at the end of the series, at the end of these books, has gotten like an okay ending. So if Dorian doesn't get his happy ending and Manon ends up getting killed, I will be hanging from my window. They end up kissing at some point, and he's about to like sleep with her, and like they have this conversation where she's like, I would make you beg, and he's like, I'm never begging anybody for anything ever again in my entire life. And I love it. It built him character. It built him character, because the old Dorian, he probably would have begged, but this Dorian is not begging. And they're about to kiss, and she's like, you know, chained and whatever. He ends up being like, maybe another time, and he leaves. Manon and Aelin end up getting in a fight over Alide, because Manon tells Aelin that Alide is alive and that she's looking for her. Aelin is like in disbelief, and she slaps her like a few times, because she's like, where is this girl at? You just left her for these people to like basically torture. And Manon takes it basically. Dorian convinces them to get her out of the chains, that she doesn't need to be chained, and Aelin agrees. And Aelin goes to see her with Fenris, and turns out that Fenris is not Fenris, but a bloodhound sent from Erewhon, and that Fenris is down like under in the like bottom of the ship, working on the ship or something with the rest of the people, because he's possessed him and he's not actually Fenris. Bloodhound tells Manon that Astrid was killed by her grandma in Erewhon, and that she'd begged for her life basically in the end. He reveals to everybody on the ship that she's the lost queen of the Crokins, and that she's the last of her line basically. And Dorian attacks him and kills him, which then the ship gets attacked by a bunch of Ilkin, because naturally so, you can't have a moment of peace in this series. Somewhere on the ship, Aelin is vomiting, and Rowan is like, are you pregnant? Because naturally that's the first thing a man is gonna think, that she's pregnant, which she's not. And now that I know the end of the book, this scene makes me so hurt and so upset. But anyways, she ends up vomiting, and Rowan is like, are you okay? Are you good? What's going on? And she's like, don't worry about it, I'm not pregnant, get me Lysandra. Lysandra comes to take care of her. Rowan ends up leaving, and his like inner dialogue, he's like, or inner monologue, I guess, like, she didn't even ask me if she wanted a kid, because Aelin is not against the idea of her being pregnant, because she needs to like continue the line, the royal line for Terrasen. So she doesn't mind, which makes so much sense. But Rowan is like, she didn't even ask me if I wanted kids. Elwë is being burned to the ground, and Maeve is burning it, and she's pretending she's burning it down even though fire is not her thing, because she's trying to make it seem as if Aelin is like this angry queen and that she will burn down whoever doesn't go with her. Elide gets her period. Lorcan goes to go get her supplies. As he goes to go get it, Vernon shows up and he tells Elide that Lorcan had left and that no one cares about her and that Manon is dead. She almost gets taken, but she gets away, and Elide and Lorcan end up getting away. They get away and they continue moving towards Ilwy because he's like, well, I know where the queen is and I want to go see her and I have something to say to her, because now he knows that the key that they gave him was a fake, it's not real. And so he wants to talk to Aelin. So he dips with her to go to Ilwy because he knows that that's where she's going. And as they're going, Elide and Lorcan end up kissing. I told you. I have a feeling about these things, man. I'm telling you. They end up kissing, and she tells him that he'll always have a place with her, no matter where. Like, he'll always have a place in Paranth with her. They're about to get into it. She about to give herself to him when an army of ill can show up. When I told you there's not a singular moment of peace in this entire book, like, Empire of Storms was just pain, 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 pain. Like, in Tower of Dawn, Nisreen and Sartak push their trip by another 3 more weeks because, you know, they're doing like really well, and Nisreen is meeting with all these people and she's helping them like learn how to like work with a bow and arrow because her aim is really true. Chaol meets with the Kagan and asks him to help him and to send more troops to help Dorian and Aelin, and he gets wheeled out. He basically gets like kicked out of the room, and he's very, very pissed about it. And so he takes it out on Yrene, because where else is he gonna do it if not Yrene? Who, you know? And he ends up fighting with her because he's like, oh, they wheeled me out of the room and you know how embarrassing that was, blah 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 blah. After he feels really bad about fighting with her, he goes to apologize to her. He's like, I never meant any of what I said. And as he's doing that, he gets up. Paralyzed man gets up. He gets up, and not only that, but he gets up and he starts moving. He takes a step towards her, and then another. Because every step he takes towards her, she takes a step back. And every step he moves forward, she steps back. Until her back is against the wall, and he's walked over to her. He kisses her. He's like, oh my god, my legs are moving. And Yrene, being the queen that she is, because she wants to do some research on what is going on in town, she convinces Hasar the princess, one of the heirs, to throw her a birthday party in the desert because they think that there's something in the desert. So Hasar agrees, and Chaol is like, we'll go together. We'll go do your birthday party. Sartak's little flying creature ends up flying into a spider silk web and getting stuck there. He almost dies and almost kills Nisreen and Sartak, but somehow they get away. Then they move like to get away, and they end up getting stuck in this like little small situation thing to get out of. She's not stuck, but Sartak is stuck, and he like stops fighting and he tells her like, go, you need to go. And she doesn't want to leave him because obviously, you know, there's feelings there, because as he's pushing her away to go, he's like, I love you. I have loved you before I even met you. Are you kidding me? And then, because this was a cute moment and we can't have just cute moments, one of the spiders, or like one of the weavers situation, comes to her and tells Nisreen that they're waiting on the Queen of the Valg, which guess who it is? Surprise everybody. It's fucking Maeve. Maeve is the Queen of the Valg princes. She's not the Queen of the Fae. Chaol and Yrene go to the desert to throw her the birthday party, and everybody's being an asshole to Chaol. Hasar makes this joke about Aelin drinking him under the chair, which is a dig at his chair. Yrene tackles Hasar into the pool, and when they get out, Chaol is like, why did you do that? Like, that was insane. Why would you fight against the princess? They end up kissing, and he gives her a locket for her birthday as a birthday gift to put her little note written from Aelin. And after that, she's like, oh, I'm gonna cherish it forever. They end up sleeping together. Yrene and Chaol sleep together. She grew a spine, fought against a princess, and then got laid. Like, what more could you ask for your birthday? They make it to the key on Empire of Storms. They make it to the key. They're looking for it somewhere. And as they're looking for it, they get a blast of warning from Lorcan's power saying that there's a legion of 500 Ilkin coming towards them. By the way, if you see me looking down here, it's because I have my phone with all my notes on it. Aedion gets pissed that there's a legion of 500 Ilkin coming towards them, and he blames Aelin for it. He's like, this is all your fault. You wanted to show off your power. Why would you do this? Like, this is all your fault. You couldn't just keep going north to Terrasen. You had to come and do this. She pushes ahead and gathers all of her magic, and she blasts them all away. Ends up getting help from Rowan's power as well. So he comes over to her, he like hugs her, and they're kissing, and she blasts all of them away. And everybody is shook by it. All of this is happening while Elide and Lorcan are hiding, and they see Aelin doing all of that. So they come out of the shadows, and they go to meet Aelin. And Lorcan gets attacked by Fenris and Gabrielle in their wolf form because obviously Maeve has a blood oath on them and they need to kill him because that's what they were sent to do. So as they're fighting him, Elide throws herself in front of him and gets bit, and her arm almost gets mauled off, and Rowan comes over and Fenris heals her, and Rowan tells them, you cannot hurt either of them. They're under the protection of Aelin. Aelin meets Elide, and they have like this adorable fucking scene that is so sad. They're both crying, and she's like, her last words were that she loves you, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud to know you, and I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for your mom. And she pulls out the cloth that Kaltain had given her, and a stone that she has, which ends up being a key. So now Aelin has two keys, two word keys. She also has the lock, and they find this mirror that apparently is a mirror that Erwan is using, and he plans to put it on posts to like help amplify his powers or something like that during a war. The Queen of the Wastes, which I don't remember what her name is, but the Queen of the Wastes comes, and she has an army with her, and apparently she took Melisandre's army as well. They took like the town with help from the Queen of the Wastes army, and they come to Aelin because Aelin had written a letter for them saying it's time for you to pay your debt, because apparently she had saved them at some point. Aedion and Lysandra have a moment where, whatever this is, I really enjoy it, and she's like, how do you continue fighting when you have like people that you care about? This isn't really fun anymore for me. I'm getting really tired. And he basically like gentle talks her into being okay with what is going on. Manon and Dorian sleep together, and it's such a scene. It's a scene and a half, bro. It's a scene and a half. Meanwhile, you have Aelin saying that she wants to find the last of the Croken witches because she knows that they're almost extinct, and she wants to continue to find them. Whatever is left of them, at least. Across the horizon, fucking Maeve and her ships, her legion of ships, showing up. All of them are coming, and all of them are about to attack Aelin's ship. Dorian realizes in this time that the mirror that they have is a traveling mirror. The key to the mirror, to get inside the mirror, to find out what to do, is for Manon and Aelin to step inside and to find out what to do. So they do. So before Rowan finds out anything about it, before anybody does anything about it, Manon and Aelin step through. Maeve is the Queen of the Valg, and she was married to one of the three princes, or the three kings earlier that basically had fought against Erwan, and she wasn't happy, so she starts traveling between worlds, dimensions, portals, I don't know. She opens like a hole, and she's able to travel through them. She basically convinced the other two queens that she was their sister, but she's not actually their sister. So she's not actually a queen, but she is because she's gotten into their heads. Aelin and Manon go through the portal, the mirror, the traveling mirror, and they see a memory of 1,000 years ago of Elena stealing away Erwan, and she goes and tells her father, and her father is like, what did you do? What did you do? This key was not for you to do something this stupid with. This key was meant to send us back home. This key was meant to send us away, and you used it for this shit, and you have to pay the price. And she's like, what would be the price? Like, what do I need to do to pay the price? And he tells her that the price for her is that for her future heirs, or whoever comes later in their line, that she has to mislead for them to build a key so they can send them away, send the gods and goddesses away, and seal them away. Elena meeting with Nehemia, and they basically create this entire story. Like, I don't fucking, this made my head spin, because you get a meeting with Elena and Nehemia, and Elena tells Nehemia that she must go to Rifthold to go find her heir, and they plan this whole entire situation of what Nehemia is going to do when she gets there, and how she's going to talk to Dorian, and how she's going to talk to Aelin, which was Selena at the time, and they knew who she was, and that she would help them and mislead them for her to like find the word keys and find out what they mean, because their bloodline splits between Dorian and Aelin, which is crazy. Can you imagine building this up from Throne of Glass, the very first book, until 6 books later, then it connects? Are you kidding me? Aelin's group, they fight against Maeve and against her ships, and because Rowan can't do anything, he flies to the other ships and he talks to everybody on the other ships to tell them like something, but we don't know what he tells them. And he talks to them for a little bit, and each of them says, I'll consider your offer. I'll consider your offer. And somehow mid-fight, they, like, the ships end up bringing up a Whitehorn flag, which is his flag, end up fighting against Maeve's ships. We find out that Aelin must drain her power entirely to the end to build a key from scratch. She needs to use the word keys that she has to open a gate. After she builds it, which is the lock, she builds the gate, she opens it using the 2 word keys, she makes a new lock, and she banishes the gods and the goddesses and seals them away using the key. But she must drain her power. Mind you, Maeve literally tells Rowan later in the book, Aelin is an immortal. She's an immortal. She's been immortal this whole entire time, but she didn't know it, which is crazy. But now she must give up her entire self to build this key and lock. Elena shows Aelin how she basically died when she was younger, because Elena had been watching over Selena this entire time, Aelin, and she saw her run away and fight, and she saw her get into the lake, and apparently she dies in the lake. Her lips literally turn blue, and Elena saves her, and she takes her to Erebin, knowing that what kind of training that she would get, what kind of person she'd be under. She knows this the entire time, and she allows it to happen because she wants Aelin to experience a life, because it's not fair for her to die as a young child, and because Rowan is her mate, and she knew that one day she would end up in Maeve's court and that she would see Rowan, and she just wanted her to experience what having a mate felt like. Her price, Elena's price in this entire thing, because she saved Aelin in the lake or the river, is that once the key is gone and the lock is gone and everybody is banished away, that she would disappear as well. Kale is able to walk again because the power in him is in his hands. According to Yrene, the echo of the power that's inside of him is only there because he's allowing it to be, and she tells him that he can control it. It was the Valk Prince at some point, but as she's worked on it, she's realized that he's the one who's able to work on it and create it and hone it into something different, and that he shouldn't be scared of it. Nisreen gets a letter from Kale saying that she needs to come as fast as possible because he needs her and he needs her numbers and he needs her to fight with them. And Falcon, which is one of the people that Nisreen and Sartak have been hanging out with, we find out that he's a shapeshifter and that he's also Lysandra's cousin, or Lysandra's uncle. Like, they come back, Aelin and Manon come back to Elide being held at knife point on the shore by Maeve. Maeve is holding up a knife to her, and Aelin is like, hey, don't do this, like, let's talk, I know who you are. Maeve had known this entire time, apparently, who Aelin was, and she had known this entire time that Aelin was Rowan's mate, and she wanted to break Rowan so he wouldn't be her mate. So she tugged on him, and she confused him by making him think that the girl in the market that he thought was his mate when she's not his mate, actually. He was just confused, and he gets her pregnant, and she breaks him. She gets people to attack her and kill her with his baby because she wants to break him so badly, to the point when he sees Aelin, he doesn't recognize that she's his actual mate, which is so insanity, because imagine... It's so insane for a woman to do all of this. And for what? When Rowan sees Aelin the first time, it doesn't register that she's his mate. She's his actual mate. This entire time she's been his mate. and she's immortal and she can live her entire life. Maeve tells Aelin that she either comes with her, with Maeve, and get acquainted with this guy, this Cairn character, or she would force Allied to come with them, and she would force Allied to be with Cairn, even though she's so very scared of him. So Aelin, being the fucking nice fucking person that she is, she tells Maeve to leave Allied alone, and that she would do whatever she needs to do, and she agrees to go. Maeve has her whipped, and this entire time that she's being whipped, she's bleeding, and as she's bleeding, she tells her to count and to give her 10 lashes, but she doesn't count. She refuses to count, so they start over 9 times until she stops. Her shirt is covered in blood. The sand is covered in blood. And during this situation that's happening, Aelin slips the word keys into Manon's pockets, and Manon takes Allied and leaves because she tells them to leave. Otherwise, Maeve is gonna hurt Allied. When Rowan comes back and sees that his person is gone, his mate is gone, he's like, "Where's my wife?" The fuck do you mean, where's my wife? Apparently, 2 days ago, before this entire situation, Aelin and Rowan had gotten married. They'd gotten married. She's his wife. And now his wife is gone. She's gone. Maeve had taken his wife. And we find out that this entire time, Lysandra knew what was happening. Lysandra was the only person who knew what Aelin was planning to do, and that she had been aware this entire time, and that the plan that Aelin had told her was that Lysandra would end up shifting into Aelin and sleeping with Aedion. So when they have kids, the kids would look like Aelin, because Aelin and Aedion look exactly the same and have the same eyes. And so the royal blood would continue. And the reason that she had married Rowan in the first place is to give them a king after she passes. Why is she doing all of this? Why? For who? Like, I'm not having a good time. The only reason it turns out that Maeve was there, that Maeve knew where Aelin would be, is because Lorcan, the shittiest man known to mankind, had betrayed her. He told Maeve where she would be. He told her where she's gonna be, and so when she shows up, because he wanted to save Allied, which I get, okay, you want to save the girl, that's great and all. Why? Was there no other way for you to fucking do this? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Allied chews him out for it. She's like, "I hope you're never happy. I don't like you. I hate you. This is why nobody wants to be your friend, is because nobody can stand you." And they end up chewing him out basically this entire time. Manon tells them that she has the 2 word keys, that Aelin had slipped them into her pockets. Astrid comes to help fight against Maeve's people, thanks to Abraxos, because he's been missing for like 5 days, and when he comes back, he's brought back all these witches with him, all the 13th with him, and they fight against Maeve's ships. Rowan and everybody like realizes that Aelin has gone. They see all these ships coming, and you see all these people coming saying, "We got a letter from Aelin saying that she wanted us to pay back the debt that she owed, like that we owe her, and we're here to help her, and we're here to offer military and armies and stuff like that." And that was her last like little push at helping her court. I am so hurt. Thinking about this actually makes me really hurt. Like, I actually feel physical, like genuine pain. She's just a girl. She's just a girl. Lysandra comes out, shifted as Aelin, to talk to them, to be like, "Yes, this is what you need to do. This is where we're going." Dorian leaves with Manon to find the Crokins, and Allied goes with them because she can't stand being with Lorcan. Lorcan leaves with Rowan and Fenris and Gabriel to find where Aelin is, and Aedion stays behind. And then we go back to Tower of Dawn, and we realize that Hassar got a letter from Aelin 2 weeks ago saying that she needs help, that she is trying for a better world. And Yrene thinks that the Valk princes are an infection that need to be treated, and that she can treat them out of anybody. Hafiza goes missing, but it turns out that she's bait to find Yrene and Kale. And when they go to find her, you find Duva, which is one of the heirs to the Kagan, and it turns out that she's a Valk princess There's a Valk princess inside of her that's been there since the day she got married because she got a wedding gift from Erewhon that was a ring that she's been wearing ever since. And she's pregnant. She goes to attack Yrene. Kale jumps between them, takes the brunt of the entire hit. His back is on fire. He dies. Like, actually dies. And as he's dying, Nasreen shows up. Yrene saves him, brings him back to life. And while she's bringing him back to life, there's like this force telling her, there's a price for this. Are you sure you want to pay the price for this? Somebody has to pay the price for this. And she's like, I'll pay it. I'll pay it. I'll pay it. Please, please, please don't let him die. Please, I'll pay the price. Whatever it is, I'll pay it. I'll gladly pay it. So she brings him back to life. Remember how I said, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the Kagan's kids, there used to be 6. One of them died and they were mourning her when Nasreen and Kale first got there. It turns out, possessed by the Valk, Miss Duva pushed and killed the youngest girl, the youngest child, the youngest heir. She pushed her and killed her. Duva somehow gets worked on by Yrene, and she saves her. She saves the baby. Neither of them have that darkness inside of them. The Kagan like gets on his knees and he's like, what do you want? Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Please tell me what you want. She tells him that she wants him to save her people and to send an army to help her and help Aelin and help Rowan. He agrees. Sartak, on the other hand, comes back to Nasreen, tells her that he wants to be with her. He's going to go help Aelin with or without the Kagan's approval. And he's like, my father threatened me because I told him that I wanted to be with you, and he said that you were a commoner, and I threatened to walk out. I threatened to walk out because if I can't be with the woman that I love, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be considered for an heir. And he gets named the heir. He gets named the heir. So now the heir tells Nasreen that he loves her and that he wants to marry her and spend the rest of his days with her, and she gets to stay in her hometown because Rifthold isn't her hometown. They get together, which is so cute because they have so much more chemistry than her and Kale ever did. To end Tower of Dawn and the shit show that is this book, Yrene and Kale end up leaving on a ship to go back to Rifthold or wherever, and they had married apparently 2 weeks ago. Now she's his wife. And he calls her his wife. When you first read that he's called her his wife, you're like, what is going on? And he finally sees the note that she's been saving this entire time and that she has in the locket that he's given her. And the note is in Aelin's handwriting. And he's like, oh my God, keep this. I think somebody you know or like somebody you meet is going to want to see this. Saying, obviously, it's Aelin. And that's how Tower of Dawn ends. And we get the like there's a princess being put in an iron cage, which is obviously Aelin, because they put her in an iron cage. And now Rowan is looking for her. Everybody's looking for her. They have armies. Terrasen has armies thanks to Aelin's letters that she sent out to everybody. The Kagan's army is going also. Dorian is looking for the Crokins with Elide and Manon. And that's that on that, to be honest. That concludes my reading experience with Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I really, really enjoyed these. These were really, really fun. Not really, actually. By the time I finished Empire of Storms, I was really, really fucking depressed. Because I just want the girl to be happy. I honestly don't know where the story can go. I finished the tandem read in 2 days. I started it on the 18th. I finished it on the 20th. I read like I have never before. I haven't read this way in so long. I stayed up until 1 reading. I think I mentioned this last night. I honestly don't know where this is gonna go. I am going to start Kingdom of Ash. Mind you, can we just talk about this? Because I want to talk about this a lot and I keep forgetting. These old covers, the ones that look like this instead of this, you know, the colorful ones, I prefer these. I prefer these so much. I prefer the older covers so much more than the newer ones. Why did we change them? These are so much better. Look at her. You get the badass Selena. Are you kidding me? Aelin. I remember when I first looked at how many pages this has and I said 980 pages. Is it ever that serious? It might be. It just might be. I'm really excited, but not really, to like see where the story is gonna go. By the time I finish this, I would have finished the entire series in less than a month. I'm really scared. I'm really scared. I don't know how Aelin is gonna get out of like emptying her magic to make this gate lock key situation. In the beginning, I think I said when I was reading like Assassin's Blade and Throne of Glass, I think I was saying how I think she's so narcissistic almost. While I stand by that, I think she has reason to be. And I think her character development has been really nice to see. I don't know. I really am loving these characters. I don't know about Kale. To be honest, I'm still a little iffy on him. I did grow on him a little bit in Tower of Dawn. I did enjoy the tandem read. I've never, ever had an experience like that before in my reading experience. In my years and years and years of reading, I have never done a tandem read, and I thought it was really interesting. I feel really accomplished now that I've finished it. I'm really scared. Don't flip through it. I'm really scared. I'm gonna get started on this today, probably. I'll update you from there. So, yeah. Wish me luck.